You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys having you here and being a part of the big show. If it wasn't for you guys, what would we do with our spare time? We just, I don't know, we'd sit at the bar drinking or something. So, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we have a most amazing author on the show joining us. He's going to inspire you to talk about mental health and being a professional executive coach and how to really improve your life. And I think his story is going to resonate with you. And if not, well, then go listen to the show again, because you probably missed something. In the meantime, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Subscribe to the big LinkedIn newsletter. It's so popular. Go to YouTube.com/Chris Voss and Chris Voss 1 on the tickety-tockety over there. So there you go. Justin Brien joins us today. He's an author, motivational speaker, transformational coach, and mental health advocate, which is the opposite of what I do. I'm a mental health broken individual. So he's going to advocate for us, and we're going to learn some stuff from him. His newest book came out May 24th, 2023, Chasing Shadows, Fighting the Monster Within, which is what I do on Fridays. So there you go. You can pick it up wherever fine books are sold. Justin is a mental health advocate, inspirational speaker, professional executive coach, and also he is a loving husband and father of 2 amazing kids. He enjoys coaching his son in all sports that he plays in and spending time with his family. He loves to play hockey and is an avid fitness fan. He believes that the power of sharing your story can help those who struggle ask for help and realize they're not alone. And that's one of the things we talk about on the Chris Voss Show. We're story collectors here, and stories are the author's or the owner's manual to life. So, you know, most people don't get an owner's manual. Stories are the way we share, inspire each other, and we learn from each other. Welcome to the show, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
Thanks for coming. It's an honor to have you as well. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
You can find me at justinbrien.com. That's JUSTINBRIEN.com. It's like O'Brien, but without the O.
There you go. And are you Canadian?
I am Canadian, as you can probably tell when it says I play hockey.
Yeah, the hockey was the tip-off, but yeah, it's the O. It picks up when you probably say a boot, it'll get really heavy. Love our Canadian friends. You guys are the nicest people up there north of the thing.
We try to be.
I think it's because you're hanging out with all the moose up there. I mean, that's what it is. They're pretty docile until you piss them off. I've seen that. So anyway, give us a 30,000 overview of your book, Chasing Shadows, Fighting the Monster Within.
Well, as you can probably tell by the title, you know, I was fighting a monster within. You know, I grew up with very low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-confidence, and that just transpired into substance use, from drugs and alcohol to battling with my mental health, being diagnosed with depression, clinical depression, which is like a major depression, anxiety, ADHD at 30 years old. Now, I didn't get diagnosed till later in my life, so I didn't even know I had all these things.
Wow.
But it ultimately led me to becoming suicidal for 6 straight years.
No.
You know, I tell people it's not like I wanted to die, but I wanted that pain to end, and I didn't know what that pain was. And it was that pain of me not liking myself, the pain of guilt and shame of the things that I was doing. And, you know, I ended up putting it into a book. And the book walks people through my life through substance use, but then what I learned and what I did to get sober. Like I lost my family. My girlfriend left me with my son at 6 months old because I started hitting the bottle hard again, and I was in no shape to kid around. I don't blame her, right? Mm-hmm. It was she did what she needed to do, and that was leave me. And then I really started to go down, and I'm very lucky to be alive. I woke up one day and, there was blood in my bed, and pulled back the sheets, and, there was a knife, and I don't remember doing any of that.
Wow.
I remember very fortunate to be here a couple times. I would black out when I drank, and, I went through rehab a couple times, but I kept saying that I could do this. I could do this alone. I can have one. I could just have that one.
Mm-hmm.
I proved it time after time that I couldn't have one, and that I needed the help. And then, finally at January 4th, 2019, I found myself sitting downstairs in my bed, or in my living room. I had tinfoils on my windows, and I started looking around, and I saw pictures of my son. I saw his toys in the corner, and I just started thinking, man, Justin, you got two choices here, pal. Like, you can either, go get help, or you can end it. And, that day I phoned my mom, and I said, listen, you need to take me to the hospital. So she took me to the hospital, and with my dad to my left of me, my mom in front of me, and counselor to the right. It was the first time I admitted out loud that, if I was going to continue to feel the way that I did, that I had a plan, and that plan was to end it. And on that day of January 4th, 2019, I've been sober ever since. And I actually got back together 3 years later with my son's mother, and we have another baby girl. And that's how I ended up going back to school at 33, 34 to be a coach, a speaker. And all of a sudden I decided to put everything I learned into a book. So that book goes over my life, what I did, but it's not just a book, it's a workbook, right? There's questions at the end of every single chapter.
Okay.
That asks you thought-provoking questions, and it really inspires you to transform, inspires you to make the changes that you need to make. I broke it into 3 different parts. I have life during alcohol, life after alcohol, and then learning lessons. In the learning lessons, you got your needs, how to make choices, how your choices can affect you, building a support network, and like how self-love is best love, how change is actually possible. So in those chapters, it actually gives you more questions to ask yourself. So it is essentially an autobiography chocked full of learning lessons that goes over mental health. It goes over substance use. It goes over the stages of substance use. And it really just, I try to get you to grow. I want you to answer the questions when you go through the book. Even if you think you don't struggle, you can pick up on something. I remember listening to Grant Cardone's book, 10X, I think it's called. And he says the difference between rich people and poor people is that a rich person will read the book and say, I got one thing out of it. A poor person will read the book and say, I got one thing out of it. Now, I want you to read this book. And if you're not struggling with your mental health, or if you don't struggle with substance use, you will still get one thing out of it. Try to do one question. And then maybe that will open up you into a whole new world of, hey, actually, I might need to make a change here. Yeah. Maybe there is something that's bothering me. Maybe there's an underlying trauma or a relationship that I need to mend. I need to build on. So if you can, even if you don't struggle with that, I mean, 1 out of 8 people around the world struggle with mental illness. And 1 out of 5 will have a mental health episode at some point in their life. So that's like one of your friends, one of your family members, 1 out of the 5 of those will have a mental health episode. So it really introduces you into mental health, what substance use disorder is, and then really gets you to look deep inside and maybe there's a change I need to make.
Most definitely. So tell us about your upbringing. Was there some trauma in your life? What caused you to turn towards some of these self-destructive ways, depression? Was there some triggers in your childhood that caused this?
Well, growing up, I think when I look back on it now, I think I had ADHD as a kid. I got diagnosed at 30. So I was always acting out. I was trying to be the funny man. I was trying to be liked and noticed by everybody. And, I was getting myself into a lot of trouble. I get suspended, right? I do stupid things, but I got good grades, right? I was on the honor roll, and people liked me, but I didn't like me. However, there's one spot that really I was kind of bullied by my friends, but not in order to hurt me. But, I was picked on a lot because, I was voted in school most likely to make a girl faint on cue. So I dressed nice, right? And since I acted out a lot, people called me flamboyant. So people would actually make fun of me a lot. And it wasn't I don't think directly hurt me because they're my friends, but it started to get to me, and I started to make my identity. I started to believe it.
Wow.
Justin, you are that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But at 10 years old, I remember driving with my stepdad and my stepbrother, and he looked at me and he says, Justin, would you fight your stepbrother? I'm like, yeah, for sure. Well, all of a sudden the vehicle veered off the road, and he looked at me and he's like, all right, get out. You can fight him right here. Now I looked at him and I just put my head down, and I didn't know what to say. I was lost. I was confused, and I put my head down. I got scared, and I told him, just take me home. And that was the first time I ever felt powerless in my life. But it wouldn't be the last. I was whipped so hard one time in PE class by a guy, and I got a bruise and I started to bleed, but I was so mad. But I was so scared of people back then. I was smaller. I was a late bloomer as well, and this guy was bigger than me. And he, I watched him fight a couple times in high school, so I didn't do anything. And I felt powerless again. And then I was trying out for hockey teams, and I got cut from a few, and I felt powerless to make those teams again. And I didn't have any way of dealing with what I was going through. I didn't understand what I was going through. So I didn't know what to do. And, in high school, I didn't drink much. But when I got out of high school, I found what alcohol gave me. It gave me confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. What I realized everything was giving me was fake. And then all of a sudden, everything as soon as it started to take away from me was very real. Lost relationships, lost jobs, lost self-respect, lost son, lost partner, right? And it took me a long time to get that back in my life and really take back that control of, what, Justin, you aren't your thoughts, you're not your past, you have more worth than you think. And to really change those beliefs that, what happened to me as a kid is I wasn't in charge, or I wasn't responsible for that. But I'm now responsible for how I react to that. My parents were split up at 8 years when I was 8 years old, and I eventually went to live with my dad because I didn't get along with my stepdad. And when I look back, he was drinking a lot, and it was around
your dad or your stepdad?
My stepdad. And you get memories, you get flashbacks that you kind of see the verbal abuse he went through. And I remember one time I was sleeping in my bed, and my mom crawled into my bed. My mom opened my door, crawled into my bed, and looking at her, and she's scared. And then my door opened again, and it was my stepdad, and he's peeking in. And I just sat there and I stared back at him, and I didn't move. I guess I was thinking, I dare you to come in.
Wow. So it sounds like, ADHD, you're talking to somebody who had it pretty severely too in my youth. Usually it stems sometimes from trauma, and you're acting out, you're looking for attention and stuff. Do you think that maybe when your parents got divorced, that had an effect on you? That how long was it before your stepfather came into the picture too, by the way?
Not very long after that.
Huh. Interesting. Because when a man loses a father, it's a big deal. It's bigger for a daughter, but at a young age, parents getting separated, there's anxiety. Was it me? I'm not saying that's what you felt, but I'm just kind of curious if you think maybe that contributed to some of the issues you were having and how you're trying to overcompensate as a child, because we don't know how to deal with it. We're not built to deal with it at 8 years old.
No, and I didn't get along with my stepdad. He was completely different. Like, don't get me wrong. Like he taught me how to, I built a house with him. He took me camping. We did rentals together. He taught me how to dirt bike and snowmobile. So there were some good times. Yeah. He had his issues, right? And I have nothing against him.
Yeah.
It's just, he was doing the best he could with what he knew at that time, but he was dealing with his substance use for sure.
Yeah, most parents are. They're doing the best they can. Even our natural born parents are doing the best they can. But there is something about that shock and trauma and divorce, losing your father, and were you the oldest child?
Yeah. Well, I had an older brother, half brother, okay, but I still barely know him.
So you were the second child who's looking for attention. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I hated getting dropped off. I see my dad every couple of weeks and on the weekend, and then I hated getting dropped off Like me and him had a lot in common. Like, we love sports, right?
Mhm.
And my stepdad, he would take me to hockey, but because he knew he had to, kind of thing. And well, I guess he didn't have to, but he still chose to take me. But me and my dad, we had the same likes and loves, and we got along, and we watched hockey together. Like we just bonded. We had that a little more a connection. So I hated being dropped off, and eventually I went to go live with my dad.
Yeah.
At 12 years old, I'm like, I'm out of here. I need to go live with him, and I did live with him. And growing up, is I got a lot of things that I wanted. I got to play sports. I got to play baseball, hockey. I played volleyball and soccer in school and basketball, and I got a lot out of that. But now, seeing a counselor, and he looked at me, and I'm very fortunate that I started seeing a counselor again, because he finally looked at me and said, Justin, you didn't get the love and connection you needed as a kid.
Yep.
And I looked at him like, man, don't bring my parents into this. I'm like, don't blame them for my choices.
It's not about blame, though.
Yeah.
It's not about blame. People are doing the best they can, but recognizing that it had an impact is the key. So,
So he said to me, he's like, Justin, I'm not trying to blame them.
Yeah.
He's like, but you didn't get the love and connection that you needed as a kid. And so that actually opened up a whole new room. I got to walk into this room. And when I walked into that room, I actually phoned my dad. I'm like, listen, this is what this counselor said. And he's like, you know what, Justin? He's like, you probably didn't. He's like, I should have said I loved you more. I should have picked you up more. He's like, I finally learned this past summer when I was writing my book. No, before I finished my book, I got to put it in because I opened up that door, because I went to ask for help again, just to stay up front. I don't want to go backwards. I've been backwards. I don't like backwards. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll fall a little bit, but I'm gonna get myself back out of it, or I'll ask for help. So I did, and he said that, and it opened up the door to that. And I found out that my dad is an Army brat, and he was at 16. His parents he watched them fight, and he's like, maybe I use substances too much, but I didn't have the guidance. I didn't get the guidance I needed. I didn't.
And there's a loss too. There's a grieving thing and a reaction to the grieving when a loss. So in the divorce, suddenly, this person who's your father and you look up to, and, that thing that, father, son relationship, suddenly he's gone, or he's taken out of your life and removed. And there's a loss there. And one of the problems that children have is they are prepared to deal with it. They're not adults. They don't have a system set up. So it's a real crisis for them. And I see this a lot with divorced young men who grow up. It's even worse if they grow up with single mother homes. But you had a comparison between your stepfather and your thing. So it's great that you identified this. And like I said before, and like your therapist said, no one's to blame. I mean, I forgive my parents for whatever sort of transgression I thought they did when I was young and naive. Everyone's doing the best they can, but it's great that you identified this, that you crossed that threshold and had that moment where you're like, okay, and you're able to reconcile with your parents too, and maybe they can heal as well.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and I really commend my dad, because I was like, Dad, do you care if I put this in my book? And he's like, no. He's like, honestly, if it can help another dad be a better dad, he's
there
like,
you go.
Then I'm all for it. And it's not very easy for a man to say. You're like, hey, I wasn't a good dad, but I'd say I wasn't a good dad for those 3 years that me and my girlfriend, she's now my wife, were broken up. I put my son in front of the TV. I put him in front of the TV because I had that weighted blanket on me, man. I couldn't move. I was so depressed that he would have to watch a lot of TV. And when we first broke up, I actually could only see my son twice a week for 4 hours at a time.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't drive with him per court order in my car because I had an equalizer, and I was a wild card, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to earn the biggest thing I ever had to earn. Not only my sobriety was the right to see my son on a regular basis, and I wasn't the greatest dad, and I had to really go back and look at that and be like, okay, now what are you going to do to change that? And I have no problem with telling people that I wasn't a good dad. And I'm not even, I'm probably not a great dad still.
I'll be honest with you, Justin. Like, I'm not a father, but I don't know if I wouldn't have been a good father either. But a lot of fathers that I know a lot of fathers that are my age. I'm 55, and a lot of them talk the same way. And I don't think there is a good dad. I don't think there is a perfect dad. I mean, I think you have to give yourself some grace as a father, because, or as a parent, or mother, father, there's no instruction manual. No one goes to school for it. Everybody just fucking wings it pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how, you're dating, you're having fun. All of a sudden, hey, baby, whoa, what caused that? They have studies now that tell you how that happens. But, people do the best you can. And some people do good. Some people do better. And I think most fathers that I know that are my age, that are my best friends, they kind of feel like at their kids are in their teens and they feel like they're doing pretty good. But were they the best fathers? I think they're all pretty critical like you are of yourself, and it's okay. I think that's what I'm trying to say is it's okay. And, you can always, your whole life, you're going to be able to look back on, whether it's your father or your life. I look back on, I don't know, something I did early this morning and go, well, that was dumb. You're just going to have these collections of things. But the most important thing is you can do is what you've talked about in your book, and what you're talking about is being present, being here, not so much worried about the past, other than, doing some reconciling, and of course, recognizing with these stories, how you got to here. But, there's no Superman dad. And believe me, I've met guys that people are like, I think he's the super dad. They're not, man. Everyone's got a host to their own bag of problems and issues and probably regrets of maybe how they could have been as a father. So, I think one of the lessons you're giving to people is, give yourself some grace. Yeah. It's okay. That's why I never was a dad, because I knew I'd be awful.
Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how you can change. But it did take me 3 years, and I like the fact that I can look back now and give myself some grace. But I can look back and be like, hey, like 2 months ago, I did something there. I'm like, that actually wasn't the right move.
Yeah,
I should have apologized. I'm okay. So here's an example. Yesterday we dropped off my son at hockey, and I had to go to work, and my wife has a earache, like a really bad one. She's not feeling good. So I told her I'd tell my son to go meet her out in the parking lot after, and I didn't do that. And then she thought I did, so she kind of gets in an argument with him, and she's like, nobody believes me. And so today, because I had to pick him up from school, I had to apologize. I'm like, hey, Teo, that's my fault. I didn't communicate with you, and I'm sorry for that. So I had to apologize to him today. And would I have done that back in the day? I probably would have tried to stick by my guns. And
yeah, but that's so important, because you're teaching your son accountability, truth, self-actualization. A lot of people, we're talking about this on the prior show. A lot of parents, and I don't know how many, but a lot of parents seem to think that if you tell your kid one thing and do another, that somehow they'll believe it, what you tell them to do. And kids pick up on your behavior and what you do. If you tell them one thing and you do another, they pick it right up. They go, hey, this guy's full of shit.
They're smart, man. They're sponges too.
Yeah, they're sponges, but they see you and hear you more than I think most parents think. So, my parents are good parents. They, but they told us stuff like, don't lie. And then we catch them lying. I'm like, hey, we catch you doing the lying there. You're not living your truth. So I think it's great that you're honest with your son that way, and you show him yourself accountable. Part of being a leader and part of being a man is not only being a king and being benevolent, but also being able to show that you can be benevolent, and that you can admit when you're wrong, and you can apologize. And otherwise you just end up a narcissistic Machiavellian asshole like me. So there's that. Don't be like me, folks. But no, I mean, this is the great thing about being a man. You show that there's a full circumference of character, and that's what you're instilling in your son, and what's important. And your son's seeing that you aren't infallible, that you aren't perfect, and that you make mistakes, but you can admit to them, which is probably what your father couldn't self-actualize at the time and couldn't admit to you, maybe, or your stepfather. Now you can do that. So you're on a great path, I think.
Well, I'm trying to be as open and honest with them as I can, just to show them that, for one, you got to work for things. Two, life's not going to be easy.
Yeah, that's the way of being a man. Yeah,
it's not fair, but to treat everybody with kindness, especially because you don't know their story, right? Yeah. You don't know what someone's going through. You don't know if they lost a job that day, if they lost a loved one, or they got diagnosed with a mental illness, if they forgot to take their medication, if they're dealing with generational trauma. One of the things that I learned in coaching that stuck with me the most is all behavior makes perfect sense. And
that's interesting. All behavior makes perfect sense. I never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's why I do the show. So I learn stuff.
Yeah. So someone's acting a certain way for a reason. Now, I'm not saying that means that
it's the best reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying let them treat you bad, let them treat you poorly, let them walk all over you, but there's a reason why they're acting that way, so try your best to not take it personally. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the hardest things you can do. It's like, oh, this guy's treating me and then all of a sudden you get in your head, it's like, well, they're treating me bad because I'm not a good person.
That makes sense. I heard somebody say one time, or maybe it was in a book, where someone talked about when people are being evil, they don't really understand they're being evil because either that's how they were raised, being immoral or unethical or whatever sort of character flaw you want to label you want to put on it. But they don't understand. They just think they're doing what they're doing or defending what they're defending. Maybe you talk to somebody about politics and they're on the opposite side of politics, or maybe you talk to somebody about some issue about life or belief system you have, and you're like, that really, do you see how hypocritical that is? Do you see how stupid that is? Do you see how, the opposite of what you think you're trying to accomplish is that? And they don't get it because they maybe were raised a certain way. Sometimes I see this when I deal with people that act like shitheads, or are morons. And you're like, you realize that was how they were raised. That's the only imprint they have to go off of, and that's their blueprint. And so you can't save those people. They've got to go on their own journey to figure out how they're fucking up, kind of like what you went through. They've got to go through their cathartic journey. But you just can't have those people around you. But, they think in their minds that they're trying to do good and that they're doing good, and maybe sometimes they're doing some evil shit. I mean, there's some ugly stuff you can do in this world, evidently, if you look at our prisons. Mm-hmm. And they just haven't gone through that. So it's great that the self-actualization is there. And I like how you've put in the book different questions or workplaces to do that. Now talk to us about what you do with coaching. I've got your website up. Give us a website plug here in the middle of the show. We'll get a jam in for that real quick.
It's www.justinbrien.com.
There you go. BRIEN.com. That's justinbrien.com. And so tell us what you do there. Tell us what you do with coaching and you're speaking now and doing all this stuff.
Well, I take people through a transformational journey. I'm a transformational coach. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple options. I have a do-it-yourself course up there that's 6 weeks, mindset reset, back to the basics, where you just have a video. You're run through video modules of me speaking, of my face looking at you and telling you or encouraging you, let's say, to do it week by week, right? Mm-hmm. And then I have my 12-week program where you work with me for 12 weeks one-on-one, and then we go through that journey of what you want to accomplish, and we go over through modules that I've created that bring more self-awareness and ask thought-provoking questions for you to really get a deeper dive into what you want out of life. But also we talk about every week, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to create? What do you need more clarity on? Do you need to reframe your thoughts? Do you need to work on your beliefs and give another perspective? Because we need that on certain things, on how to approach certain people, on how to make certain decisions. When, as people, we want to be like, okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, what about that? Have you tried that idea? Have you entertained that idea? Mm-hmm. So I just work with them on that to, trying to get them that future them that they want to create.
So that's awesome. So there's several resources they have there on top of your book, and of course the book's a great introduction. You're available to speak. You've got when people want to potentially onboard with you, maybe see if you're a good fit. Is there a way for them to reach out to you and maybe either book a time or a call or something? How do they kind of see if they have simpatico with you?
Well, they go to my website, and then there should be a Calendly link in there where they can just book in a time with me. They can just email me at justin@justinbrien.com. They can check out my Instagram, send me a personal direct message and I'm at justinbrien19 on Instagram. I love hearing from people if they read the book, if I'm on a podcast. I'd love to hear just their biggest takeaways. What's their story, just anything like that. But if they're looking for speaking engagements, I've been fortunate enough that I've lived quite the life. I've worked up north, working on rigs. I've managed restaurants. I've played junior hockey. I've worked in mills. I got a plethora of knowledge that experiences, let's say, being a gypsy, where I can speak to a wide variety, of people. And I typically speak on mental health, on substance use, on choices. Because everything we do in life comes down to a choice and a decision. What is behind that choice and decision? Well, for me, a lot of it was my mental health and substance use. So I speak on that and personal awareness and talk about motivation and how they can get from here to here and what I did.
There you go. Now, you also have I think you may have mentioned this, the Mental Health Menu 14-Day Challenge book, ebook people can get free on your website as well, right?
Yeah, so that's just a mental health menu 14-day challenge. Just walks people through 14 days of coping mechanisms, mental health goals. It's just a 14-page PDF, which is completely free for you to try. Just like, hey, you know what? I'm going to try these different kinds of coping mechanisms. There's, I think, maybe 14 on there, or there might be more, but it walks you through day by day, gets you to pick ones that you like to do that you can implement every day into your life, and it gets you to try new ones. But just one or two, so you don't get overwhelmed, because you see all these gurus, these influencers, and here's 5 ways, here's 10 ways on how to improve your life, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna do all those 10 things. Well, for one, no, you're not, and if you do, you're gonna be overwhelmed. Unless you're a super dad.
Huh? There you go. I like these things that you offer people to help them. Have you ever studied Stoicism?
I know what Stoicism is. Yeah, kind of the overview of it.
Yeah, if you get a chance, I advise you and my readers to pick up Marcus Aurelius' Meditations and study Stoicism. It really helps with trauma, and it really helps men a lot, and gets us in our masculine frame of logic and reason. And gives us a really good concrete basis. And so I recommend everyone grab a copy and read it. I keep one by the office site here and spend time going out in the sun and reading it in the morning for my vitamin D. But good stuff. I mean, Stoicism really helps men. I think it really helps men too that had father issues or mother abandonment issues. It really helps put us back to our core of how kind of we're designed and built, and gives us a real mental rock to, I think you made a comment somewhere in the line of it is what it is, which is kind of a tenet of Stoicism. The world is not fair, and that's the way it is. It's,
here's the thing, it is what it is, but you got to deal with it. You got to accept it. You got to learn how to forgive it. You got to learn how to work through it. I tried to put my book out as fast as I could because I wanted my role model, my grandfather, to be able to read it. Unfortunately, he passed before it was finished. I got to read him the chapter about him, and I put that chapter in because I really look up to this man. He is one of the greatest. He is the greatest man I've ever met.
Oh wow!
And you know what? I had to. It's when he passed, I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Now what am I going to do?
Sounds like he may have been your father figure rock when you were growing up, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I looked up at this man. He was there for his family. He's quite the man. He golfed in the summer, like, every day until he was like 89 when he passed. He played pickleball, he played hockey, he played baseball, and he did it with one bicep. And he was tackled by a cow twice. Broken femur, broken ankle. Like,
damn. I feel like a pussy now because I don't have any broken stuff and I'm not doing any of that. So he's a tough guy. You know, I had the same sort of experience with my grandfather. My grandfather was an alpha male from the old school. I mean, shit, they decided to get a house. They built their house. This is like in the 20s. They're just like, yeah, we want a house. Yeah, we're not going to buy one. We're just going to build one. And it's still up today. You know, he was just a rock, salt to the earth man, and a wonderful parent, father. He was tough, but he was loving and kind. But he was the alpha father who set the standard for fathership for me. My father was a good man, but he had some real feminine issues and problems, and weaknesses of character. And you know, but he was a good man. He tried his best, and he had his moments of greatness and goodness. But you know, to me, having my grandfather really set that standard for me, and I'm glad you're celebrating him. And it just sounds like he had probably a bigger impact in your life that you'll learn more about as you go through life.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely something you got to work through it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, those guys came from an era. I just feel blessed because I'm on the cusp of men who went from alphas to betas, where men went from logic and reason to emotional. And we live in a society that tries to promote emotionalism and being emotional and stuff. And this is why stoicism is so important, because you can have emotions as a man, but you've got to have logic and reason that doctor them. Otherwise, you might as well just go be a woman, really. You know, women are very emotionally based. Men are supposed to be logical and reason based. And this is, you know, people that struggle sometimes because they don't have that father figure in their life, or they don't have a good stoic alpha male in their life. They end up, you know, this is where we got the participation trophy generation and all this other crap that we're dealing with these days in society. And so it's just real important. But I'm glad you celebrated him and recognized him in your book.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I believe that when I took the Tony Robbins, strategic intervention course, it's men need to have the masculine part and the feminine part. You need to be able to show your emotions, talk about what's going on, because the longer you keep it in, it's going to eat from the inside out, and then you're going to turn into a man that you don't like, a man that's going to push people away, a man that's going to be, feared, and then you're going to start to fear yourself. But it's good to be a man.
Yeah.
To be able to stick up for your family, stick up for yourself, you got to have that self-belief, but it's good to have that feminine part where, which is a little more caring, compassionate, and kindness. And, it's just women are tentatively, they do that more. It's natural. It's more natural for them than it is, man, especially from how people and for how you were raised and, the experiences you go through. But it's good to have both parts, right?
Definitely. I mean, you have to have balance, but the challenge is one does not overrule the other, or emotions don't overrule it for a man.
Yeah, no. If you start to get ruled by your emotions, especially when you start to make mistakes, you start to make stupid decisions. If you let emotions lead your decisions and your choices and your actions, well, then you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's what I did. I'm sad. I'm going to do some cocaine. I'm sad. I'm going to drink some beer or drink some straight vodka. Or you're going to say something you don't mean and you shouldn't be saying.
Yeah. There's an old line from, was it The Godfather? Women and children can make mistakes. Men can't. We're expected to hold to a different standard. We have to deliver. We have to perform. We spend a life building who we are. We're not born into our agency. We have to build agency. We have to contribute to the world. We have to contribute to a family and provide for them and protect. And we spend a lifetime doing that. Most men do not peak on their value until they're about 50, 55, my age now, where they make their most money, they make their most resources, they have their head completely put together. It takes a long time for us to get to that point because we're valued for our resources, what we provide. We're not valued for beauty or youth or femininity. The world whips the crap out of a man if he doesn't stand up and do what the world expects you to do or society expects you to do, which is to produce, make something of yourself, and make enough of yourself that you can give it to a family and build a family and contribute to the world. And so it's tough being a man. But yeah, you can't have emotions rule you. You need logic and reason. You can have emotions. I think some people think that stoicism means you're emotionless or that you pack away emotions. And it's not. It means that you can look at your emotions and not let them control you like the wind or like the sails. And I can look at my emotions, I can feel things and go, okay, well, that feeling kind of sucks. But I'm not going to go, like you said, make bad decisions based on my emotions. I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to look at it from a logic and reason standpoint and go, well, that's a great little emotion you got there, Chris. And it's okay to feel that. And okay, great. We did that. And now let's try and figure out a way to maybe overcome why you're feeling that way. And, that we have different logical ways we can process that. So it's really good stuff. Final thoughts as we go out and pitch to listeners to work with you.
First, I think it's really important to get men to feel safe enough to say how they feel. To be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm not having a good day, to ask for help. Because unfortunately in this world, one person every 40 seconds takes their life, and 75% of that is men. So I think it's to get men to feel safe enough to ask for help and to, not be embarrassed about it. Right? Because we all struggle, but it's okay to ask for help. Last final thoughts. If you like this episode, if you have a story, you just want someone to talk to, please reach out to me, www.justinbrien.com or at justinbrien19 on Instagram, or email me, justin@justinbrien.com. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode, how your life is going, and I look forward to chatting with you.
There you go. And I think there's a lot of young men who maybe have gone through your journey where they're struggling to find themselves, whether it's, alcohol addiction. We had someone on in the prior show that had alcohol addiction problems when they were growing up and things in youth. And so it's so great to see someone like you going through the cathartic times and surviving, because some people don't, and it sounds like you ran pretty close to the edge. And so it's quite the inspirational story of coming back. I mean, it's great that you got back together with the original mother of your child, and now you're building a healthy family, and you're on your way, Justin. So I highly commend what you're doing, man. And I hope people will work with you and support you and bring you out to speaking gigs and hear your story, because there's people out here that need to hear your story, and that's what makes it so important.
Well, I appreciate that. And hey, if you ever need a book, pick up Chasing Shadows, Fighting the Monster Within. If not for yourself, for somebody else. I've had people tell me that a lot of men actually, holy cow, I feel the same way. Or, hey, there's that man up stigma. Because I lived by that man up stigma, and it almost took my life.
Yeah.
And then that fired my internal dialogue. But I've had people say, hey, I had to skip chapters. I had to skip this part because it's heavy. There's more in that book than I've talked about today. So you do be ready to read a story, right? And
there you go. Give us your .com one more last time.
www.justinbrien.com.
There you go. Thank you very much, Justin, for coming on the show. Order up the book, folks, wherever fine books are sold. Chasing Shadows, Fighting the Monster Within, Stories of the Great Owner's Manual of Life. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.